First and foremost, I would like to thank the media and everyone in the audience for taking time out of your busy schedule. And the times are very crazy right now, so I want to thank you for coming. First, before I start, I've been hearing some things, and I don't like the way it seems like the narrative is twisting. That the MCPA is trying to incite the protesters and the F-12 movement. Didn't know anything about it. We set this date way before. We've been delayed because of COVID-19 and the protests before it. As of yesterday morning, I was at work and the field force was dismantled. The funeral was over with. So we figured, okay, everything settled down. And so now, as of last night after I left, we heard supposedly we're mobilizing, and now it's this movement. We have nothing to do with that. I've been on for 22 years. My board members have been 20 plus years. We love our department. We support our members. I've served in several field forces, so I know what it's like. I've been in Elion, Los Bonbon, the Gold Cup, and last but not least, FTAH. So I know what it's like to be on the front line. And so we support our young officers out there, and we want them to be safe. We support people who have the right to protest. However, we don't believe in looting and rioting. So let's put that out and clear the air. Secondly, I know why most of you are probably here. I'd like to start off with, I don't know if most of you know, some of you may or may not know, back in January, and let me go back a little bit, our complaints and issues with the police chief started from as early as August of 2018. So there's been a long battle with the chief of police since 2018. We've written letters, we requested to speak to him, we wound up going to the commission, we had a presentation from the commission. At the end of the commission, two of the commissioners decided, we want you guys to go back and meet with the chief and the mayor, and after 60 days come back and tell us what the outcome is and see if you can resolve it. The commission meeting was on January 17th, the mayor's office called us in on March 4th. We felt the meeting was a waste of time. All the important issues, they basically told us, well, we can't talk to you about this because the FOP sent us a letter, which was a shock to us, that we can't talk to you because it's a violation of collective bargaining. Now, I'm an FOP representative. I never saw the letter go out, and I said, well, tell me what we violated. We can't tell you that. So the minor issues we did discuss, none of those were resolved either. We left that meeting March 4th. We were never contacted again. Now we're into June. We see the chief of police on several networks, hosting TV shows, giving comments. I've seen him on several occasions, personally myself, doing press conferences with the alleged black community leaders in the community. It's a slap in the face because our members kept us away. We have unfinished business. We have issues of racism, hostile working environment, discrimination, and so we don't talk to the MCPA, but we're doing a press conference with these other leaders. It was a slap in the face, and they decided it was time to act. So that's how we wound up here. Also, while waiting during the press conference, the last commission meeting, during that time, and even prior to that, we received a lot of complaints from officers from the past, retirees, current experienced officers complaining about some folklore going out on how is it that Chief Kalina is the present chief of police, and he's talking about race issues, and yet he used the N-word back in the class in 1997. I heard the story, and initially when I tried to talk to people about it, most people told me, hey, listen, it happened, but forget about it, you could never prove it. Documentation, you will never find any documentation to the matter. I gave it up. I said, you know what, they're probably right. But after the commission, I guess when things started picking up around March, right before COVID, members started coming out telling me the same thing. So I told my executive board, I said, you know what, we're gonna put an end to this. If it's true, we're gonna find out. So I said, let's do an investigation. So I started calling people, and then little by little, people started talking to me and started telling me, yes, it's true, this is what happened. And I started hearing more and more of the complete story. And one thing that I found was that everybody's story lined up. They may have been off a little bit, but everything that they said was very similar. We did public records requests for Chief Kalina's IA profile, things of that nature. We didn't see anything at the moment. And what I did was, I remember from my past experience as the past president of the MCPBA, I remember that we also kept files, police files, at the Miami River Center, which is right here, 444 Southwest 2nd Street. And so I remember from my past experiences that because we're city employees, we keep files there, and we also keep them at the police department. I requested to go see the chief's file, and when I found the reprimand, it aligned perfectly to what I heard. So that's when COVID-19 hit, so we took a standstill. And so when we saw the chief doing interviews and things like that, we said, well, now we're not going to be ignored. It's time to talk about it. And lastly, we felt that the reason pulling this information is important. A lot of the issues that we're having in the department right now, we have issues with supervisors using the N-word towards officers. Chief never did anything about it. We have officers where their ethnicity was criticized, was made fun of, ridiculed, their accent, their age. Chief barely did anything about it. We had an officer complain about a black man being beheaded, placed on his death, not even an apology. On the contrary, all they faced was retaliation. We found that when we did some research in the academy, black males, out of let's say 10 black males let go from the academy, 8 were dismissed. But when it came to Latins and white males, it was totally opposite. We also found in our research that black males' numbers had decreased in this 2-year period. And so, as being the president in the past, I dealt with 3 previous chiefs: Chief Exposito, Chief Rosa, Chief Yanez. And never in my experience has the MCPBA been disrespected like Chief Khalid. He's launched bogus investigations into the MCPBA. He's let it be known his disdain for us. And he's caused so much havoc that people are now scared to be members of the MCPBA. So based on the retaliation, based on all those things, that's why we think it's important. He also likes to try to minimize our complaints by saying, well, we're just mad about promotions. What Chief Khalid didn't tell you, if you have an opportunity to watch the hearing, he tried to make it about us being against black females. It was never that. All we pointed out to him was black males were being underrepresented. And he tried to make it about that we were against black females. He likes to tout how many blacks he's promoted. I like to push back on that. First of all, the blacks that the chief has now, he didn't promote himself. Secondly, here's another point that we find important. How many blacks did you demote or force to resign? We have 2. How many whites, and how many whites did you promote in that time? Maybe 10, 11? How many whites did you demote or Hispanics did you demote or force to resign? 0. So if you're telling me we're only 27%, but you're telling these great numbers of promotions, but let's look at the back end. Look at the disparate treatment when it comes to retaliation and punishment. So you're telling me, so no whites or Hispanics, over 70% of the department are not making mistakes and don't deserve to be demoted and forced to be fired? So we find that ridiculous. So we want to go back to the commission because it's been over 60 days and to hopefully get a finalization. I don't know, I heard there was a press conference from the mayor today. I didn't see it. The last I heard, I was happy to hear that he said that he helped force out a previous chief for policies that were detrimental to African American males. If you recall, I believe that was Chief Exposito, because I was president at that time. And also he said that if he had a racist cop, that he would get rid of him. So what we would like to see the mayor really think long and hard that these things go hand in hand. We believe that Chief Khalid harbors implicit biases, and it reflects today on the department. Whenever we talk about our issues, he's tone deaf. And lastly, the majority of our black staff members are not MCPBA members. So they have no investment to see if the rest of the organization succeeds or not. That will pretty much conclude. I know we're busy, but that's some of the things that I wanted to harp on. Now I'll be willing to take some questions.
What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see Chief Kalina go back. First of all, we would like to see justice for our for the members who were discriminated against, put in a hostile work environment. It starts as something as simple as an apology. You know, most of these guys were transferred. They were written up just for speaking up. So we would like to see him change policies, and we have a lot of policies that are actually good ones, enforce the policies.
You like to see him resign? Because I've read that you feel
yes,
that way.
Yes, like I mentioned before, I've served as president with 3 chiefs prior. I've never seen a police chief intentionally go after the second oldest black organization If you recall, if you look at your packets, we came to Chief Kalina, wanted to work in partnership. We brought out some problems. We offered solutions. And all he did was disrespect the organization and retaliate against us.
So you'd like to see him resign?
That's correct. That's correct.
Now, in his defense, he released that statement to the entire police department saying, look, he was part of a training class. He wanted to show what language was used. He was the top instructor in his class. Nobody complained about it. He was brought before the chief, and he, I guess, was reprimanded for lack of tact and all that. But he feels that he's being unjustly accused, that there was context to what he said.
I disagree. I'm going to push back on that because if you look at the reprimand, they talked about some officers who were offended. The verbiage was so offensive that they didn't even want to put it into the reprimand. Secondly, they wanted to be part of his permanent file. Thirdly, why was he written a reprimand if it was just a training technique? Number 4, it was a Region 14 class. This is a professional class, which FDLE, which provides our certification, allows you to put on these classes. You can't use that kind of language in that class. And that's why when he says the chief was worried about the perception, what was going on, you have other agencies there. They're going to go back and tell, hey, I went to a training class by the city of Miami, and the detective used all type of, maybe whatever, profanity, but we know the N-word was used based on what our members told us. The people who my sources told me.
So the mayor says he supports the chief.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
In part because of some of the policies he says he's put in place in his short tenure as the chief. And the chief said some of those in the video message, which I'm sure you heard.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on, it sounds like you're going to be wanting to press the mayor to see if he could be dismissed, and per the news release, want a national search for a new chief. What are your thoughts knowing that the mayor says?
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken to the mayor specifically or recently. I would hope that he would reconsider, but I will give you an example. The previous chiefs, I know for a fact, with Chief Arosa and Chief Yanez, we had a nationwide search. They had a panel with the state attorney's office, the public defender's office. They had, I believe, the union, and they went through a process and they whittled it down to the best person. They did that with Chief Arosa. They did that with Chief Yanez. Chief Kalina was just given a 20-minute interview. Had they done the process, I'm sure they would have found out that he had this issue with his file. And I would say that most people would not want to take a chance and say, hey, if he used that kind of language, I know it may seem bad, I may not want to go there. So my opinion, I don't think the previous city manager did a good job because he just did one interview, 20 minutes. 2 previous chiefs, 50, 60 candidates, and you got down to the best.
So the police do say that of the 24 people promoted within the police department, 10 are black, 15 are Hispanic, 1 is white.
Right.
With 10 being black within the 24 that's promoted.
Correct. Now, here's what happens. It's semantics. Yes, you have 10 blacks, but you have to remember, some of those blacks were already staff members. All he did was just move them up one position. So these are not all newly created positions. So when I say 10 blacks, the most ever in history, you have to look at, half of them were already staff members.
And then a third, is this accurate? A third of the police department's sworn officers are black, men and women.
Well, right.
A third of the department.
Yes, you can say that in totality, but what you have to remember, we had something called the consent decree from 1970, well, it was 2 of them, but let's say 1975 to 2018. That consent decree was put in place to ensure that blacks, at that time when they said black was used to refer to black males, not black females. Black females were grouped with females, so you had three categories with reference to the consent decree. Hispanic males, because at the time in the 70s they weren't the majority. You had black, which were black males, and you had females, which encompassed everyone. And so the consent decree was put in place to ensure that black males were being hired at a fair pace. We've had other, if you look at the history of the city of Miami, from the consent decree to Make a Difference campaign, Operation Black Badge, the city of Miami has a bad history in hiring African American males. And it still happens today. Like I told you, I have a statistic. Under Chief Kalina, the percentage of black males went down by 5% or 0.5%. I can't remember the exact, but it decreased.
And last thing, the mayor, just to get to your response, the mayor told us this afternoon, this, and you kind of hinted at it when you talked about, there was that moment in November that we covered. And learning from you now that this dates back to right after it sounds like he started, right?
Correct.
So this has been a long, months-long, years-long dispute now.
Correct.
You know, the mayor's kind of pondering, you know, is there some sort of personal friction with a few members of your organization that seem to be in a beef with the chief, as opposed to this being reflective of something more systemic?
I think it's both. I think it's systemic. You see the patterns, but like I told you, I'm not a novice. I've been here for 22 years now. This is my second time as president, and I've had experiences with previous chiefs, and I can tell you how they treated us in the past. I'll give you, from my experience, Chief Arosa was the best chief. I never had to wait for him to call me. He would call me once a month. Stanley, come up to my office. Any issues? No, not really. Okay, come back next month. He'll call me next month. Stanley, come on up. Chief, I have nothing to talk about. Come on up and get some water. Come on up and get some coffee. If I brought an issue to him, he'd get on the phone call and says, hey, what's going on? This stops immediately. I want this, and it happened. I saw Giannis do it. Exposito, believe it or not, we had a rough start. But at the end, he gave us respect because he knew the issues we brought. We brought the facts. We brought good intentions. I don't know why Chief Kalina started off like that, but when you look at his history, obviously to me, his implicit biases, he becomes tone deaf and he cannot understand what we're trying to tell him. Because everything we gave was facts. Everything was factual. There's nothing we made up. If you look at when we first started, this is not about me. This is not about my vice president or my board members. All I'm doing is I'm bringing you the complaints from my membership, saying these things are happening, and all I get is pushback and slow walking and stonewall. So that last move they pulled really disappointed us, because here we're coming with open hearts and good intentions, and you tell us, well, we can't meet with you because the FOP, which I'm FOP, the FOP said we can't talk to you about these things because it's a collective bargaining violation. But everything we're talking to you about are racial issues, so you can't talk to us about it. And like I said, they can even tell me what collective bargaining issues were wrong. Are we talking about wages? Are we talking about striking? Are we talking about vehicles? Are we talking about days off? So it was baloney to us.
So what's your immediate next step, and how do you define success? What is success
Well,
like?
our next step, we're going to request to go back to commission, and they told us to come back in 60 days. We never went back, and so we plan to go back to commission and re-petition to move on from Chief Kalina, because I believe if you're so caught up in your personal beef with the MCPBA to where you bring up bogus investigations, I think it's time for him to go. We need a transformational leader that's going to bring the best out of everyone, that's going to bring everybody together, and that's going to create a culture that's respectful and professional with everyone.
If 1997 would never have happened, would you still be asking for his resignation?
Yes.
And tell me a little about the bogus investigation.
Sure. I work in the property unit. I don't know if you know, in our presentation, we did a presentation where Chief Kalina had over 200 investigations that were past 180 days. So, you know, when someone makes a complaint, you have to have 180 days to try to resolve the complaint. I'm in training. We have about close to we have over close to 40 employees. Someone made a fictitious complaint, anonymous. This is how you know it's bogus, an anonymous complaint. And we get called in to internal affairs, 40 employees over a 2-week period, and they want to know, do you feel the MCPBA is more important than the police department? Are we serious? I've never seen that before. And they were trying to call on the point that the MCPBA is against Chief Kalina, and you guys against it's the MCPBA against Chief Kalina, and this went on for about 2-3 weeks. I've had 3 investigations. I've been in profit for 2.5 years. I've had 3.
When was this?
Excuse me?
When was it?
This was December of last year, December 2019. And recently, from December to January, I've been in property unit for 2.5 years. I never had any problems. Now I've got 3 reprimands in 2 months.
Personally.
And everything is MCPBA related. It's about the MCPBA. It's ridiculous.
So in that videotape message the chief put out, he called for the timing of these allegations disgusting. He's claiming this is politics, that you guys are trying to capitalize on the murder of George Floyd. We caught up with the mayor earlier. He also echoed, not in such harsh language, but he said the timing of these allegations are unfortunate. Your response to that?
Totally false. If you look at our history, if we have the original letter in the packet dated August 2018. This has been a continuous, I can provide you later on, the emails we've sent up the chain to the city manager, to the commission to come and present this case. If you look at, we went in front of City Hall on January 17th of this year. George Floyd wasn't dead yet. These issues of protesters wasn't even an issue at the time. People thought we were crazy. And so if you look at it, it's all false. Like we told you, COVID-19 came, we held our position. When the protests happened, like if you remember the evening when the cars had, they burnt vehicles and things like that, we had the information then. We didn't do it. If you look at it, we waited when George Floyd was already buried. I left work yesterday. Our field forces were demobilized. When I left yesterday, I said, okay, things are calming down. You know, things are not as violent. And then so we said, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do this press conference. And we already put it out, and we try to be, if you notice, we try to be a group of our word. If we told you this date and time, I'm not gonna cancel at the last minute. But that's why I put the statement out to let people know that we support our brothers in blue. It has nothing to do with that, and I just think it's so funny they're trying to change the narrative. You know, MCPBA supports protesters that are against the police. It's ludicrous. I've been here for 22 years, so.
So there were two, you mentioned there were two, I don't know what their title, I don't know what rank they were, but there were two black officers who were demoted.
Yes.
Since January 2018. But from what we understand from police, both of those were replaced with black officers.
Correct. So, but if the white and Hispanic also the majority, and you don't demote them, you don't think that's ironic? So the only ones getting demoted are the blacks. So you want to tout the black promotions, but you don't talk about the black demotions, which are actually more than the white and Hispanic demotions. That's the disparity in treatment.
We have, since 2018, we have one black demoted, one Hispanic, one black retirement that I think you guys consider as a demotion.
It was a forced retirement, right?
But that's it.
Right. So you got two blacks.
And one Hispanic, and all three replaced with black men.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know if men were replaced by a black officer.
The third one may have been replaced by a black female.
A black.
Yeah.
So you have two black, one Hispanic, and all three of them replaced with a black officer.
It may be.
So.
But if you look at the imagery, right? You say all three have been replaced with blacks, but the fact of the matter is that's a cover-up. The only ones he demoted at first and forced to retire were blacks, right? He just recently demoted this Hispanic. This was recent. I know I think it was March or April of this year. So from 2018 to March of this year, there were no white or Hispanic demotions. So replacing them with a black is irrelevant. It's irrelevant because the numbers show the Hispanics are the majority of the department. So how is it that we're being demoted at a higher rate? And so you replace them, you're not really adding new, you're just replacing them. The only one he replaced was the Hispanic, right? The Hispanic male. He just demoted the Hispanic male April, May of this year, and he replaced him with a black female, right? Are we talking about the sergeant? I know the sergeant at arms, right? Mm-hmm. I know exactly. He just demoted him. But if you take him away, you had zero white demotions, or zero Hispanic demotions, and that's my point.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. I'm sorry, did I miss anything?
Let me add something to that. We keep playing the semantics game with the chief about promotions. This was never about promotions. The timing is right for us to stand up and talk about what's going on in America right now. I was reading a study that I put in your packet where 1 in 1,000 black men from the age of 20 to 30 are dying at the hands of police. 1 in 1,000. 39 in 100,000 are Hispanic, 59 in 100,000 are white. That's alarming. I have 3 sons between 20 and 30. So when I leave here today, I'm not a police officer. You wouldn't know I was a police officer when I hit 79th Street. I'm a black man. Chief Khalid is not a black man. So he doesn't have that same worry that me as a father have, or President JP has as a father, because he has a son in that age group. He has 2 sons in that age group. So is the time right? Of course. Had we been on Brickell you wouldn't have seen 4 black police officers, 3 of them holding down a white male and a black male with his knee in a white man's neck. You would have never saw that. So the time is right. So we can keep talking about, and this keeps happening where the chief plays semantics, where we keep getting back to, we're talking about promotions. We're not talking about promotions. We're talking about black men dying. We're talking about systemic racism in police work. You know, and as long as we continue to not believe that there's racism in police work, we're all doomed to fail. People are protesting in every state, in numerous countries around the world, and we're here talking about freaking promotions. People are dying. So the chief is lost on that he's not the right man. He's not. And he can be the nicest guy in the world, and he may be. People are gonna love him. He's donated money, he's given time. Just because I give a phone call when the pastor calls or someone calls, does that make him a great leader? No, all it makes is, okay, he's responsive to a phone call. Or do I go to a community meeting? That's all it does. But if you have someone like a Javier Ortiz, who is 60 complaints, and he's still here. He spit in our face when he said he was a black man. He hasn't shown any proof yet. The leader that's over training is a Latin lieutenant who kicked a black man in the head, who also was fired for lying. We brought this to Chief Kalina, and guess what? He's still there. When is the time? I just want to know, because this is disappointing to me that we keep dancing this story, and if the mayor wants to go with Chief Kalina, I feel sorry for our community, the African American community, because that's the community I belong to. Because when I leave here, I'm a black man. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get on my high horse, but
in echoing what you were saying, the mayor earlier when we caught up with him, he said, you know, again on the timing, as we're sitting here right now, there's a rally protest downtown that's titled F the Police. And he's sort of accusing you guys of inciting some of this unrest and encouraging that. Can I just get a clear response from you guys about that?
If we weren't here, would they still have that rally? They would still have it. It has nothing to do with us. It's unfortunate of the timing, but people are dying.
If I may, just like my vice president said, when is the right time? I left work yesterday, we demobilized. George Floyd was already buried, right? So we thought everything was good. So every time a rally comes up, it's our fault. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. So, and you look at the history, how long we've been fighting this battle. And you know, and I think you guys are pretty sad that you're catching that every time we start to make headway, people understand it goes right back to, oh, you're mad about promotions. No, it's ridiculous. It's the total system, the systemic racism that happens. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Gary Johnson, former president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, now the national president of King Clergy. We had a meeting last night with about 80 pastors, and it got back to us that the chief was using these words. And Brother President, we appreciate y'all taking a stance. We have not met with the chief yet, but we plan on meeting with the chief. We have another meeting on Tuesday with we got numerous of calls now. The pastors wanted to have a discussion about this. For me, if the chief used that word, this is not about promotions and all that other stuff. If he used that word in a derogatory manner, that's what's in a man's heart. What we saw the officer with his knee on our brother's neck, we've had explicit biases training and many other things. But the bottom line is, if that's in your heart and that's your behavior, it will contriculate down to the department, and other officers react in a manner that they can get away with those things. So if it's right, and we're gonna meet with the chief, and I was asked by even a couple of officers that was forced to resign with this department. My pops was a city mine lieutenant, so he's deceased now. It's very important that these departments be held responsible, including the mayor.
Correct.
Because the mayor has some issues as well. So if it's a matter of taking a stand for what's right, then we're gonna stand with you for what's right, no matter who's against us. And if it's time for the chief to leave, then it's time for the chief to leave. And if it's not, the chief left doing his job, he has to do his job in a manner that he include everyone.
Right.
So, but thank you for allowing us to be here.
And to that point, let me say this. So, if not us, who? So, we're supposed to go into the community, write tickets, make arrests, do reports. But the man next to me, who may be a fellow police officer, if I witness him do something illegal, am I supposed to not speak on that? Am I not supposed to, I'm just supposed to be my brother's keeper and keep that blue line? No, we're all, I believe the majority of us are God-fearing people who believe in humanity. And so if I see something that's wrong, I'm supposed to stop my brother and say, hey man, what's going on? At least push him off or do something. We have to be bigger than a promotion. We have to be bigger than, oh, I like this guy because he's a very polished speaker. We have to be people of conscience. That's who we are. We're supposed to be Americans. You know, that's what our country was founded on. Was supposed to be founded on.
And so, if I may, and I know you guys are pressed for time, at the end of the day, we understand the culture of the police department leads to a Derek Chauvin. When you let these things, the N-word being used, you know, we have issues where, you know, officers are referring to the North Station, which is predominantly African-American, as monkeys and eating bananas in the jungle. And this is the conversation that takes place, and people think it's okay, and supervisors say to a black subordinate the N-word. And no, you can't allow this, because what happens if you allow that kind of culture to fester, you have the Derek Chauvin attitude, and it leads to another George Floyd. And so by changing the culture, because our department, part of the reason we took the stand is because our department is very young. When we came on, we were fortunate. We had a lot of veteran officers. When I came on, the average officer had 15 years. Now our officer may be 3 to 5 years at best. You do not want to leave this kind of culture, because guess what? Now that's another generation of
is what?
Justice everywhere.
It is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we must continue to remember what history has taught us. This museum sits here as a reminder to what was a fight for agency, for blacks, for Jews, for Latinos. All of that was represented in a space where they didn't have that opportunity. And so this museum sits, blacks that fought to preserve this museum sits as a reminder. I encourage our communities to remember to utilize these institutions to remind you. We want to know how to get rid of systematic racism and all of the different ebbs that we deal with in our communities. Look at the history. Here in this museum, you have actual black patrolmen, because they were not allowed to be called police officers, right? Have we moved from that moment? When we have a leader of a free nation using quotes from someone who was already idolized as being part of the KKK and in a just community, do you want to see that perpetuated? And we believe we have the answer here in Miami. We do. We believe right here in Miami we can reimagine what policing in our communities looks like. I like to quote and end with this quote by one of our very own first assistant chiefs. She made a quote in a conversation that we had that I think was very poignant. There's a difference, the difference that we see in the communities and in the black communities is that black communities of color are policed, whereas other communities are patrolled. Black communities are policed, where other communities are patrolled. We must change that narrative. So I thank Chief Najee for being strong enough for making that comment in a time where women still didn't have the right. So thank you very much, and I encourage each and every one of you all to look around this museum before you leave. Grab some of the information off the walls to really know what we're dealing with. This is not just for today, but hopefully this changes the future that we see tomorrow.
Any other questions? No. Okay, this concludes our press conference. Thank you once again for taking the time out and speaking to us.